Welcome to the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Brecheen.
Hi, everyone. You're listening to the Sports Scouting Report. I'm your host, Leigh Brecheen. I'm honored to say our guest today is the legendary Leigh Steinberg, one of the greatest to ever walk the planet Earth and many other planets. We actually have to cut to where Leigh starts talking because the beginning of our show, we had some technical difficulty on my end. But we pick up with Leigh Steinberg talking about how he got started in Cordell Stewart, representing Cordell Stewart from John Ehret High School, Josh Booty from Evangel Christian. Check this out. It's real good stuff.
Up a charitable foundation, which has a leading business, political, and community leaders that they could put down roots, lay the foundation for second career, and make a real difference. And that would be like work done from Baton Rouge, who has just put the 175th single mother and her family into the first home they'll ever own by making the down payment. And we call that program Homes for the Holidays. But so that was how I began. And then over time, did those draft picks. At some points had half the starting quarterbacks. In the NFL, we have 12 players who have are in the NFL Hall of Fame, and then did baseball and basketball and boxing with Lennox Lewis, but all with role model athletes who wanted to make a difference in the world.
We're listening to Leigh Steinberg, one of the greatest agents ever that's still an agent, doing a great job in the United States with all sports, like you had mentioned. And we had talked before the show, Leigh, that you represented some Louisiana guys over the years. Obviously, Cordell Stewart was one of the, went to John Ehret High School in New Orleans, went to Colorado.
Well, we did, yes, we did. And we did Josh Booty.
Yeah, Josh. I forgot. Josh is a friend of mine. I forgot that you represented Josh. Yeah.
We represented him both in baseball and then later in football when he went back to LSU. In baseball, Will Clark was one of our early baseball clients, and Will the Thrill. And I think it's the culture of Louisiana produces a disproportionate amount of really gifted athletes. If you looked at the overall population, and then you thought about all the different folks that have come into pro sports from that state, that there's more than something in the water.
Right. It's incredible because, Leigh, I got into it in 1988. My dad was a coach and got into scouting. Started working with, here's a name for you, Curly Hallman at LSU.
Yes.
Jerry DiNardo, Mike Archer, and then Nick Saban, and then Les Miles a little bit, and then I started doing highlight tapes for recruits. But the amount of talent in Louisiana, and obviously Texas, and I know California, where you are, has got a ton of talent. Florida, it's amazing per capita in Louisiana in all sports. Will Clark, it's incredible what he did at Mississippi State in the MLB. And then Josh Booty was a player of the year, obviously. What do you think has changed since Josh Booty came out and got the record amount of money at that time for baseball? I mean, it just seems like things have changed with the way that's done now. Has it changed much in the last 25 years?
Oh, my goodness. Well, now we have a salary cap in football, and we have a salary cap in basketball. And but the dollars are just exponentially larger. The NFL just did a new TV contract that will go up by 85% for Fox and for CBS.
Wow.
And 35% for ESPN. This is in the midst of a cratered economy, right? With pandemic struggles and everything. So the dollars are exponential. All the professional sports are very healthy now. And so, yes, it's a difference. Each system is different. Baseball player will come as a either out of high school or college, and then go through the minors, and in the first 3 years, the team can pay them whatever they want. And then 4 through 6 is salary arbitration, and then they become free agents. In football, every player drafted signs a 4-year contract, and after that, they can become a free agent.
Yeah, it's amazing. We're going to come back with more of Leigh Steinberg and talk about some of his current clients. I want you to be able to promote your guys that are going to be in the NFL draft, which is going to be in Cleveland, the 2021 draft. Everybody's got to watch the draft. I've been watching it since I was the age of 4, before I even knew what a football looked like, so I was watching the NFL draft. But we'll have more with Leigh Steinberg. We'll be right back. Listen, whatever you're driving right now, Tommy Harvey wants it. Bring it in to Harvey Subaru, Lexus of Shreveport, Bossier City, or John Harvey Toyota. They're paying big bucks for all trades right now. They'll cut you a check right there. Tell them Leigh sent you. Welcome back. You're listening to the Sports Scouting Report. Our guest today is Leigh Steinberg, one of the great agents in the United States. Leigh, the movie, Jerry Maguire, a lot of Louisiana people love that movie. I'm sure all over the country, but everybody I talk to, even today, you can go somewhere, and when they talk about sports movies, and when they talk about scouting or agents, they go, yeah, I guess you like that movie, Jerry Maguire. And then I look back, and I see that you were actually, the movie was actually patterned after you in a way. I mean, you were a consultant for the movie with Tom Cruise, and it's just one of those movies that everybody fell in love with.
Well, Cameron Crowe, the writer-director, called me up in 1993 and said that he wanted to do a film predicated on a sports agent as the central character. And then he asked if he could follow me around. So he went with me to league meetings one year. He went with me and met all the owners and watched me walking around free agents. He went back to the draft with me the year Drew Bledsoe was drafted. He came to Pro Scouting Day at USC. He came to a series of games with me, spent time in my office, and I told him stories, Leigh, lots and lots of stories. And then I was technical advisor, so I had to vet the script that made sure that the willing suspension of disbelief that holds you in a movie didn't get broken. You didn't think it was phony. You didn't think the dialogue was wrong or the look. And then he gave me the actors to work with. There was a young actor named Cuba Gooding Jr.
Big time,
that I took down to the Super Bowl. I made him pretend he was a wide receiver always. And I actually had to show the quarterback in the film, played by Jerry O'Connell, how to throw a spiral, because he had gone to NYU. He played push. He had gone to NYU, and they didn't have football there.
Okay.
So at any rate, so it's been 22 years of people running up to me in airports or other places and either saying to me or asking me to say those 4 words that start with "show me the."
Yeah. Yeah. They remember that line very well. Again, we're listening to Leigh Steinberg, who has represented Troy Aikman, Steve Young, our hometown, Cordell Stewart out of New Orleans, Minnie, Will Clark, Ryan Leaf, a record 8 times #1 picks. Leigh, you've got some guys that you had sent me actually an email of some of your players that are working out. This COVID's a different world. There wasn't an NFL combine, but they're being held privately or at the colleges. LSU had theirs. LSU had about 4 kids run 4 threes, which I thought was amazing. And then your guys did pretty good too. Collie Herbert did pretty good. Virginia Tech, your running back, had a 4.46 40-yard dash, 33-inch vertical, 9.7 broad jump, 22 bench reps of 225 or more. I like this kid from Virginia Tech. What do you think of Herbert? He's a great prospect, sleeper.
He's very good. We also have a safety linebacker named Talanoa Hufanga, who was Defensive Player of the Year in the Pac-12, and so we've got 3 or 4 really good players. We have had to slow down a little bit because last year we did Jerry Jeudy and Tua Tagovailoa from Alabama, both of who are doing well, and of course our veterans are playing really well.
This kid from USC, I love him. I watched him this year, and I thought USC had 3 pro safety prospects, very physical. Reminds me of Troy Polamalu a lot, very similar. And
you know, Lee, that's who trained him.
Really?
And so Troy Polamalu has his own training facility.
Okay.
And that, and of course, Talanoa put his whole game together being a fan of Troy Polamalu. And, you know, what happens is they do all the testables at either the scouting combine or this year at Pro Scouting Day. But the fact someone can run a fast 40 doesn't necessarily mean they can catch the ball.
That's right.
Doesn't necessarily mean that they can guard somebody,
right.
You know, cover somebody. And it doesn't mean they can find the ball as a linebacker.
Right.
So I think the best ultimate test of future productivity is past productivity. And that's game film. So I think that even though it's been an altered scouting system, they still have plenty enough information.
Leigh, I'm glad you pointed that out, because we have a lot of parents that listen to the show in Texas and Louisiana and Mississippi. I'm old school as a scout. I go by film and full pads. I think, like you said, the 40 times are great, the verticals are great, the broad jumps, but can the guy react, read? Is he a good football player? Is he a high-effort guy? You know, and like you said, is he really good at what he does? But obviously you got to be good enough, but it's more than the hand times, because I think we're getting to where a lot of parents think that we can just prepare for the 40 time and that'll get me where I need to go. Well, it will, but like you said, it's not going to tell you how good of a football player you are.
What it does is it has a disproportionate effect on pulling someone up in draft status. So they run a past 40, they probably jump rounds, but it has nothing to do with future productivity and what's in someone's heart, what their work ethic is like, you know, how hard they'll work, and whether or not they can actually flat play the game of football.
Right.
Because you could be a fast wide receiver and run a 40 and you can't catch a cold, you know.
Yeah, and you're representing a Louisiana native at South Carolina. I noticed you have Israel Yukimo, who's a 6'4" corner, and he's a tough kid who's very instinctive, had 3 interceptions in a game. And he's from Parkway High School in Shreveport, Bossier City, Louisiana. I had a chance to see him play Lee in high school. And saw him at South Carolina. Obviously, he had a great career there, but you don't see many 6'4" corners that aggressive.
No, he's and he's versatile and has a fast motor, and I think again somebody's going to get a part of the problem when you mention the height of the corner is the height of the wide receivers. So you now have this new group of enormous wide receivers who've got a base where they can, if they're much taller than the corner, they can just pull the ball out of the air.
Yeah, Julio Jones and Megatron. That's the new size on these guys, like you said.
There are a lot of them.
Yeah, and everybody's got a 6'4", 6'5" kid like that, and LSU's got one in the draft, Terrace Marshall, that's close to 6'4" from Parkway. Also, he was a teammate of your guy Israel, which is kind of rare. 2 on one team in the draft, Parkway High School. All my listeners from Parkway, that'll be a record. 2 players drafted in 1 year. But Leigh, we're going to take a quick break. Can we bring you back for one more segment?
Sure.
So we got Leigh Steinberg, who's with us today, and I want to talk about what he does, too, and a lot more about his firm and his agency to educate the parents in Louisiana and Texas about sports agents. We'll be right back. Looking for a used car? Harvey Autos has 3 dealerships, which means 3 times the used vehicles. They've got everything from fuel-efficient compacts to luxury models, even hybrids, and certified pre-owned with a warranty. Check out John Harvey Toyota, Harvey Subaru, or Lexus of Shreveport, Bossier City. Welcome back. You're listening to the Sports Scouting Report. I'm your host, Leigh Brecheen. Our guest today is Leigh Steinberg, sports agent and a heck of a guy. And Leigh, I followed your career. I told you before the show. I saw you. You were with Larry King on Larry King's show. Rest in peace, Larry, and several other shows that I watched to come on. But being on today in front of Louisiana with our parents and the college kids, is there one thing that you can tell them, because sports agents can get a bad rap if you don't really understand, the way the process goes.
So I think that what you're looking for is someone who actually will listen to your son and figure out what's critically important to him and what's important to the family in terms of values. Are they spiritual values? Is it short-term economic gain, long-term economic security, geographical location, the ability to be a starter on a winning team? But to listen very carefully, and it takes a family, because I virtually have not talked to a player in years before first talking to the parents or the family or whoever they designate. So it's having a holistic understanding, and then it's starting someone where they understand the power of role modeling and the power of networking, so that we're looking for relationships that can carry on into second career. And then, of course, it's passed to the draft. But I think the critical key is, are you going to be a good human being? And are you going to be productive in the long term? Mm-hmm. And do you have a caring heart? And so those sorts of athletes, parents play a particularly critical role in, because they are the first line of defense with agents. So those parents that take charge of the agent selection process and have all the calls go through them, and do the first interviews perhaps before the players ever met with anyone. But they're the screeners, and they can get a list of questions from the Players Association and other people, and they can do their research and they can do their due diligence and make sure that relationships in a way where, like I went 19 years with Bruce Smith,
Wow.
the all-time sack leader, or the whole career with a Troy Aikman or a Steve Young or Warren Moon, who played for 23 years. Mm-hmm. So that's what you're looking for, someone who has a plan that takes the young man from the day he signs with the agent all through scouting, all through role modeling, uses the off seasons to build second career, so that three of the players I've represented are now minority owners of actual football teams. And Ward Dunn from Shreveport is one. He owns a small chunk of the Atlanta Falcons. And so you're looking for young men that will be good in broadcast and good in everything else. And then you have to mentor them so they understand that it's great to do marketing and everything, but the football career comes first. And you don't want to it's the engine that pulls the train. Yeah. So it's look for someone who's going to add something of value to your life, and someone that's got the same sort of morals and standards you do.
And it's fitting that you said the movie be realistic, Jerry Maguire. That's what I saw in the movie, that you become a part of the family. And right. Like you said, you're a family for life. You become part of their lives, and it's not just representing them as an agent. It's becoming really close to these people, like you mentioned, Bruce Smith and many others that you represented. And by the way, Warren Moon, I loved Warren Moon in the Canadian Football League. By the way, that was People forget that he played in the Canadian Football League before Houston.
So if you can imagine at that point, there was a fair amount of prejudice back in the 60s and 70s for a quarterback being African American.
Yeah.
And it was also center and other things. So Warren, who's really gifted, goes to Canada and spends 6 years there. And then when he comes back, he's the first real free agent. And so he ends up signing the largest NFL contract. And probably the highlight of my career was him asking me to present him and give his presenting speech at the Hall of Fame.
Wow. Where
he became the first African-American quarterback in modern history to ever be inducted into the Hall of Fame.
That's incredible.
He was a terrific role model for young people.
I was very happy for a friend of mine, Doug Williams, when he was won a Super Bowl. And he grew up about 10 minutes from me, Lee. And from Cheneyville, Pride, Louisiana, went to Northeast, played at, obviously, Grambling, the late Eddie Robinson. But to see Doug win a Super Bowl with all those years in Tampa Bay that weren't very good years was really great to see. Now, he's with the Washington Redskins. So,
right. Now, Warren and Doug were in the same draft. That was the 1978 draft.
Really?
And they had Randall Cunningham, and those three were that generation of quarterbacks. And now, when you look at the ranks of starting quarterbacks, the last two, prior to Aaron Rodgers, the last two MVPs of the league were African American quarterbacks. And Mahomes was the MVP of the Super Bowl, and now, and even more important, we now have backup African American quarterbacks. So it's not just a matter of you have to make it to the Hall of Fame to play. So it's been gratifying to watch that from where we were in '78 till now.
It's amazing. So much has changed. And but Lee, tell everybody what's going on with SSE in your organization, and how, if a parent wants to contact you when they become, if they're a pro prospect or need advice, what would be a way to contact you and your company?
Just going to steinbergsports.com or Lee at steinbergsports.com. But you have interesting dynamic, and there's one shift, which is players at a younger age now are going to be able to market their name, image, and likeness. The NCAA is changing that rule, so they'll be able to have an agent market themselves, and that will be within NCAA rules. Now, parents can always talk to an agent. What they can't do, what a young athlete can't do, is sign with an agent while he has eligibility left. And the second thing is to take something of value. But another thing we're doing is holding agent academies for young people that want to break into the field.
Okay.
And so those are, that we actually have them negotiate a contract, we have them recruit, we have them market and do damage control. So it's a great way to break in, and we do sports career conferences.
Okay.
And so again, if there are any listeners who themselves or have kids that want to break into the sports area, we'll give you a jump start.
We actually have an intern who's in law school at LSU that's interested in it.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you can, and on our panels for the Sports Career Conference, we have so many different folks that have gone and networked and succeeded.
How many drafts will this be for you, Lee, counting the 221 draft? How many will this be?
47.
Wow. More than Mel Kiper, I think, right? Mel's probably,
yeah,
I don't know.
Exactly. I started in 1975, but still feel right in the middle of life and young and frisky and working with young people will keep you young.
Well, I really appreciate all you have done. And again, you're one of my favorite people in the business. Grew up watching you, and you've always been the ultimate professional in the business. And I know a lot of people got into the business because of you. And really glad to see that you're still doing great. You're still doing great things to help people too. And good luck to all your draft potentials coming up for the NFL draft in Cleveland. But just really thank you from the top and bottom of my heart to be a part of our show today.
Been my pleasure. Take it easy.
I hope everybody enjoyed the interview with Leigh Steinberg. We're going to go ahead and take a commercial break. And when we come back, something Leigh would want to hear. We're going to go over part 2 of spring football for the Louisiana State LSU Tigers, the defensive line. I'm going to talk about the defensive line for LSU, which is going to be one of the most talented defensive lines in the United States for the next 2 years. I'm going to break down why they're going to be talented, every player on the D-line, D-tackles, D-ends, the buck linebackers, and the nose guards. And let me tell you this. Been watching LSU football for a long time, since 1974. I remember the 82 team was the best D-line I'd ever seen, 3 deep, had 9 NFL players. This unit has a chance to have 9 to 10 players in it or even more be NFL players. And a lot of these guys have a chance to be in the first, second round before their eligibility is up. We'll be back in just a moment to talk about the LSU defensive line. So, hey, guys, just wanted to take a minute to tell you about Harvey Autos. If you need a new or used car, there's 3 great dealerships right here worth checking out. John Harvey Toyota, Harvey Subaru, and Lexus of Shreveport, Bossier City. Low prices, honest people. Tell them Leigh sent you. Welcome back. You listen to Sports Scouting Report. Before we go into part 2 of the defensive line LSU spring recap, part 3 is going to be Friday. We'll talk about the linebackers, and part 4 will be the defensive backs. We'll talk about all the talent on this talented young defense. Now, in 2019, it was a phenomenal year with Joe Burrow, the Heisman Trophy winner. It was magic in the air with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's now with the Kansas City Chiefs, Justin Jefferson, all-rookie team with the Minnesota Vikings, Jamar Chase, who sat out last year, is going to be a first-round pick, Terrace Marshall, who sat out half the year, that's going to be a first-round pick or second-round pick. All the talent that came off this team, 219 and then 220, it was a tough year for LSU. But I'm predicting the 2021 Tigers, because their defense is so talented, it's going to be incredible. I really do think they have a chance to be incredible on defense. The defensive line we're going to talk about, and let's talk about the defensive line for LSU and why they're going to be so good. From what I saw in spring, watching practice and watching the spring game, and just slowly watching Ed Orgeron assemble these defensive tackles and defensive ends and these rush buck linebackers. When you look at this 2021 team, if these guys all come back in fall, if they all come back in August, September for this coming season, this unit has a chance to be one of the best defensive lines in the history of the school on paper. Let's start with the buck linebackers. LSU has more pass rushers returning than I can remember, even before Saban. I don't remember LSU having this many talent pass rushers coming back. Buck linebacker, which they call outside linebacker on the roster, if you're a fan. But let's start with the returning senior, Andrew Anthony, who turned down the NFL, who's 6'4", 255 pounds, runs about a 4.6 40. He's jersey number 3. Decided to come back as a graduate student. I think he's going to be a potential second, third round pick or better. Andre Anthony can rush the passer. He came into his own in 2020 on a bad season, but he's got the ability. He's starting to get big and strong, and he's filled out, and he's a leader. The other buck linebacker who will be starting the season is Ali Gay, the Edmond, Washington native, is 6'6", about 270 now, runs about a 4.6. He might even run 4.59. I'll predict his pro day by the time he's done. This kid is built like Danielle Hunter from the Vikings, former LSU Tiger. Ollie Gay has not even shown his full upside yet. I really believe that Ollie Gay coming back his senior year is going to make a ton of money. And he would have been probably a 5th-round pick or a 4th-round pick, which is not bad if he would have went out this year. But he's coming back, could potentially be a 1st-round pick because he's scary talented. I mean, how many people 6'6", 270, can run a 4.6 in the 40, but super talented and just learning the game. Hadn't played a lot of football. 1 year junior college, 2 years of high school football, and really last year was only his 4th year playing football in his life. Ollie Gay is going to be incredible. He showed to everyone, including myself, anybody who's listening to this saw this. He showed brilliance in plays last year. He showed flashes of greatness. The third Buck linebacker coming off the bench who's going to be an incredible sack pass rusher is B.J. Ojulari from Atlanta, Georgia. 6'2.5", 240 pounds, run the 4.59 40, and had 5 sacks as a true freshman. He's got a chance to be a double-digit sack guy like Chasson did. He reminds me a lot of Chasson, just a little faster. And that's not all, folks. There's some more Buck linebackers on this team. I don't remember LSU having this many. So those 3 guys are pro prospects. BJ has a chance to be a 1st-round pick one day. And so does Ollie Gay. And like I said, Andre Anthony's got a chance to be a 2nd, 3rd-round pick. Could even go 1st round if he even gets any better. There's also a kid by the name of Desmond Little, who's been waiting his turn from Mobile, Alabama. 6'5", 230 pounds, runs about a 4.69, had a great spring game. Redshirt sophomore. Don't forget about this kid, Desmond Little from Mobile, Alabama. And there's more. Sony Funia from Utah, 6'3", 270, runs about a 4.8. Could be an NFL guy, could get maybe a free agent, maybe drafted 7th round. He's strong and big. He would start for most teams in the SEC. Really came in his own, getting some reps last year against Ole Miss in Florida. And look, I'm not done here. We've got another Buck linebacker, pass rusher by the name of Landon Jackson, who came in as an early enrollee from Texas, Pleasant Grove High School in Texarkana, Texas. Landon is 6'6". On the roster, it says 260. He's 275, running a 4.6 in the 40, an incredibly good-looking kid. He reminds me of Jason Taylor. When Jason Taylor was in college and ended up being a great player for the Miami Dolphins, same body, same ability. Him and Jason actually look alike. But this kid, Landon Jackson, did not play in the spring game. And he's 275 of muscle. He looks lean. He looks like he's 240. And I'm not done. There's another Buck linebacker who's going to be a 1st-round pick, I predict, before he leaves LSU. Savion Jones from St. James High School. Savion stands 6'5", weighs 245 pounds, and runs every bit of a football speed, 4.5 40, and can hand time 4.59. It's not just the 40 time like me and Leigh Steinberg mentioned earlier, but this guy can play. His first step off the ball is like a safety for a guy 250 pounds, 6'5". Savion is incredible. I think he's more talented than Arden Key, coming out of LSU, who was a 2nd, 3rd-round pick, I believe, or 4th-round pick by Oakland. But I really love this guy, Savion Jones. He was the best recruit, in my opinion, in Louisiana in 220. And I think he's going to come in and be a guy that can come in as a situational passer as a freshman. You're going to see greatness in this kid when he plays. And this is why LSU's defensive line, I'm only talking about Buck linebackers. We're not even talking about the D tackles yet, or the nose guards, which I still have to talk about. But that is the Buck linebackers. So between Landon Jackson, Savion Jones, Ollie Gay, B.J. Olaraji, Andre Anthony, Sonny Funa, and Desmond Little. You're talking about one of the best pass rushing defensive lines in the country. That includes Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, USC, all the great programs, Notre Dame. I don't think anybody has more talent off the edge than this unit. Landon Jackson's got a chance to be a high draft pick too. Savion Jones, BJ. I mean, look, I'm going to tell you right now that Leigh Steinberg's going to be trying to sign these guys by the time they're juniors or seniors. When they're done with their eligibility, when it's legal, these guys can flat out play. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I'm going to talk about the defensive tackles and the nose guards on the D-line. We just talked about the Buck linebackers, which they list as outside linebackers. We'll be right back with more of the Sports Scouting Report.
Parents, are you looking for advice on getting your high school athlete recruited by the right college? Leigh Brecheen is your answer. Leigh has been doing it for over 30 years. He knows the ropes, and more importantly, he knows the people. Leigh offers turnkey service from evaluation, creating highlight tapes in the correct format, and complete guidelines for effective communication with the schools. No matter the sport, girl or boy, no matter what grade your child is in, let Leigh Brecheen help match your child to the right college fit. Go to our website, lafootballmagazine.com, and get connected today.
Welcome back. You listen to the Sports Scouting Report. I hope you enjoyed the first part of the show with legendary agent Leigh Steinberg, who's incredible. I mean, what an incredible guy. He's done a lot of stuff for there's so many guys that want to get into being a sports agent after that movie Jerry Maguire, which originally was portrayed after Leigh. I mean, that was basically the life of a sports agent, which I'm friends with some sports agents in Louisiana. I don't work with them, but I know a bunch of guys that are in the business. But I'm so grateful for Leigh coming on our show out of California. We're going to continue on with part 2 of the LSU defense. We just talked about the Buck linebackers, the last segment, the defensive ends. In football terminology, they're looked at as outside linebackers. They're your guys rushing off the edge, something LSU hasn't had a lot of. Even in 2019, Chasson was only one guy, really, that could do that. They've got 7 kids that have a chance to be at an elite level rushing the passer. I'm so excited for Ed Orgeron and Durante Jones, the new defensive coordinator. Well, let's go ahead and talk about the D tackles in this segment for the rest of the defensive line. At defensive tackle, you have more talent than LSU's had to open a season in probably 15 years. Going back to, Saban's days when he had the late Marquise Hill and Marcus Spears, and Kyle Williams, and Claude Roten, Byron Dawson. They had a lot of great D tackles under Saban. But this unit that LSU returns in 2021 is the greatest mix of talent at D tackle that I've seen Ed Orgeron ever have at LSU. This is what he's been trying to get. And let's talk about these kids. Jacoby and Guillory, who I watched at Alexandria High School, missed last year mostly with an injury, played a little bit against Alabama, got hurt. He's going to be a force as a nose guard. He can also play D tackle. He could also move out the DN if needed. But we're talking about a kid 6'2", 330 pounds that runs a 4.9 40, benches over 450 pounds, and runs side to side as good as any human being you'll ever see in college football. Jacoby and Guillory, who gets his freshman year back, has a chance to be a first-round pick defensive tackle. He's better than Tyler Shelvin. People will see that once he gets to play a couple of games and get in a groove. It's all about repetitions. There's also Neil Farrell that comes back, Neil Farrell Jr. from Mobile, Alabama. Neil Farrell's been a great player for LSU for 4 years. He finally blossomed last year. He wasn't in the greatest shape. He's looked great in the spring game. But here's a guy that's 6'4", 320 pounds, can run a 5 flat in the 40, and he's tough. He brings it. He's healthy, and I think he's going to be a pro prospect. I think he's a starter in the NFL. He's a tough kid. And then you have Joseph Evans, who was hurt last year from Haynesville. Super kid. His dad's a policeman out of Haynesville, Louisiana. He's 6'2", he's on the door of about 310, but he's super quick, super motivated, hard worker, great kid with great talent. He's got great feet for a big guy. Joseph Evans will play D-tackle, but will play a little nose if needed, depending on if they're in a 3-4 or a 4-3. He can play DN if needed. But this kid runs about a 4.89 40, and he's starting to blossom. Another young talent at D-tackle for LSU. Another kid, Eric Taylor, who redshirted out of Alabama, is a D-tackle, number 96, 6'4", 313 pounds. And actually, Alabama offered him and Auburn. So this is one that Ed Orgeron stole out of Alabama. Eric Taylor looked really good in the spring game and all practice in the spring. He can run. I mean, super quick. I think Eric Taylor is going to be a phenomenal player once he figures everything out. Another D-tackle who returns for his 5th year is Glenn Logan out of Destrehan High School, Ed Reed's old high school, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Jefferson's old high school. Glenn Logan is a mainstay for this D-line. He's a leader. He's 6'3", 335 pounds. He can play D-tackle, nose guard. He could play out at DN if needed. He is just a super leader. This is his year to shine. He decided to return for that 5th year. I think Glenn's got a chance to be a great player. He's got so much more to show. And if he can stay healthy, he's got a chance to be drafted. Another D-tackle who plays DN, but he can play D-tackle or DN outside in this 3-4 or 4-3 is Jacqueline Roy, who played as a true freshman from University High School in Baton Rouge, was one of the top 2 D-tackles in the country coming out in 2019. Jacqueline Roy had 3 sacks in the spring game. His first step off the line is crazy. Jacqueline Roy will be a high NFL draft pick. Got a chance to be a first-round pick. Another D-tackle is Mason Smith out of Terrebonne. He's listed as the #1 defensive tackle in the country. He was an early enrollee out of Houma, out of Terrebonne High School. He's 6'5.5", 6'6", about 310. Lean and mean. He reminds me of Kendrick Allen that played 5 years in the NFL from Bogalusa under Nick Saban. I think this kid could be a phenomenal player. He's a DN, but looks like a D-tackle with his size. He's incredible. He looks like when you make a D-tackle, if you wanted to design one, he's the way they should look. But Mason's just a baby, and I think he'll get reps in this deep group and become a great player in time. There's another D-tackle who can play DN that's coming in from the state of Florida, from Ocala, Vanguard High School. His name is Bryce Langston. Bryce was offered by the Florida Gators, Miami, Florida State, all the big schools, Auburn, Alabama even offered him early. Bryce is 6'3", 275 pounds, runs a 4.8 in the 40, and was All-State twice in a really tough league in Florida, in that Orlando area. Bryce Langston is probably the best D-tackle LSU has signed since Trevante Valentine, who never really came around from Miami. That was a great player. But this kid, Bryce Langston, can also play DN, could also play nose, could also play D-tackle. He could play anywhere on the line. But this is the strongest, deepest unit, most talented unit I've seen at LSU in 15 years. I mean, this group, and you also have a kid who missed spring, number 55, Jarrell Cherry from Dallas, Texas, Carter High School. Very great school for putting out NFL players. Jesse Armstead came out of Dallas Carter. But Jarrell Cherry missed spring with an injury. He's a redshirt junior. I think he'll make a great guy in the rotation with this unit. He's benches over 400 pounds. He's very tough. He's put on a lot of good weight. He's about 280 now, 6'2", could play DN, could play D-tackle. I really think, again, that this D-line is phenomenal. It's going to be the reason LSU can be a top 5, top 3 team in the country in 2021. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you enjoyed our guest, Leigh Steinberg, one of the great sports agents to ever become an agent and still practicing today out of California. Represented over 60 first-round draft picks. Some of his clients are just, it'd take 3 days to mention all his first-round draft picks over the years in the NFL. Really appreciate him spending his free time, in his busy schedule to join us today. And I hope you enjoyed the LSU D-line, talking about how good the D-line's going to be. In our segment 3, we'll talk about linebackers, and then we'll have segment 4 talking about the defensive backs, which is the corners and the safeties. And we'll also talk about the kickers, which they've got one of the best kickers in the country in Cade York. We'll talk about the long snappers, and we'll finish it off with those guys. But I hope you enjoyed the show.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Leigh Brecheen.